call for you. Got two packages here. One of them from our buddy Chris, who loves to send coins inside of the bank envelopes here. I always appreciate that. Thank you very much, Chris. Also got a package here. It looks like it could possibly be a book. So we'll open up those here in just a second. So told you guys about going to the movies last week, and while I'm sitting there in the movies, somebody starts yelling and just carrying on and creating havoc, and I eventually lose it and yelled at them, told them to show some respect. And they left. I was telling some other people about it, and they were talking about some of the rudeness that they have experienced lately from a lot of the people just in general. And it just makes me wonder, it's just like, where is it that people's heads are going, that they just can't show like just some decent respect to the people that are around them, like being in a movie theater with a bunch of other people, and you're screaming your head off at not screaming your head off, but creating a nuisance of yourself while everybody else is trying to enjoy themselves. I just don't get it. So anyway, but with that being said, I'm going to go and watch that movie again because the Columbia Theater didn't change their movie this week. So I'm going to go and watch Everything, Everywhere, All at Once again tomorrow. Let's open up the mail. Let's open up the package first. Let's see what's in here. All right. Wow, 64 of you guys already. That was quick. Okay. Oh, hey, right on. It's our buddy who does the children's books. The baddaddy.com. Question Authority. Thank you so much. Sent me one on Bitcoin. Well, very cool. The beautiful Bitcoin book. I am looking forward to reading this one. My boy loves the other ones. This ought to be a great book to read, and I will give you a review of that today. After my boy comes home from school, we'll read this one. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. All right, and let's see what Chris sent. Chris always sends some of the coolest coins, and I like how he sends them in this in one of the like a bank envelope that you would get like cash in from the bank. Well, you got it taped up pretty well here today. Oops, man, I'm not doing a very good job here cutting this. There we go. It's got it all taped up here, like in a little pouch kind of thing. All right. Oh, right on, bro. Trying to do it without tearing it up too much. Here we go. Okay. So, sent me a $20 bill. Thank you very much for the 20. And it looks like... Cool. Let's see here. 1976 Bicentennial Quarter. Oops, I got that upside down. Very cool. With the drummer on the back. Very nice. 1983 Bermuda. That's pretty cool. And then it's got... Is that a bird on the back? Let's see here. 1987 500 pesos. I think the Mexican coinage, I think, is some of the coolest stuff. I love these birds, these shields, the stuff that they do. Very cool. Let's see here. 1957 Mexican. Oops. I'm not sure what he wrote there. It looks like another peso. 57, that's pretty old. And then the last 1971 Canadian penny. Very awesome. The maple leaf on the back there. All right, $20 for lunch for a day, or some on me for taxes. Hey, appreciate it, man. Yeah, I have a pretty hefty tax bill, which is TurboTax kind of screwed up with that. So I don't know. I'm probably gonna end up paying fines because I don't have it paid early, or paid off in time. But that's okay. We'll move on from that. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. What else do we have in here? There's something else in here. Oh, right on. Very cool. It's one of those 1 gram, 1 gram silver bar. Very fun. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that, man. And thank you for the book too. I can't. Sorry, did you leave the name in here? Yeah, there's no note or anything. Let's see. Hi, Simon. Enjoy, buddy. Let me know if you want to discuss. Phil. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, man, we should definitely have a conversation sometime. I'd really appreciate that. I love the idea of these books that you do. Alright, let me slide that back in there. Oops. Get that silver back in there, and the note. Alrighty. Where did I leave links to? Oh, yeah, talking about the rising of interest rates and the balance sheet roll-off and deficit spending, bringing the deficit spending down. All that stuff, monetary tightening. I mean, it seems to be pretty prevalent within the news now. The Federal Reserve raising the interest rates a 0.5 percentage point, talking about doing a 0.75 percentage point, but didn't come to fruition. It's going to be a 0.5 point. Most likely it's going to be another 0.5 point going into the future until they get it up to that 2.5% mark. I'm assuming that's probably going to be the limit for the Federal Reserve and their Fed funds. Already you can see the damage that it is doing to interest rates, especially when it comes to the mortgage market. Holy moly. I mean, we see mortgage rates going from 3.25 just 5, 6 months ago to what? 6.75, I think I saw them at one point. And that's huge. Like, that is a huge difference. On a $500,000 home, which, I mean, I don't know who the hell could afford a $500,000 home anymore, right? But on a $500,000 home at 6.75% interest rate, if I remember right, it was somewhere like around $2,800 a month, which is just like incredible to think about as far as like trying to make a payment on something like that. When you think like interest rates going double this to like making a $500,000 home at $5,000 a month, your $250,000 home at $2,500 a month, I can't imagine that the real estate market is going to be some kind of hot and heavy, prevalent place to be going into the future from here. That's going to be like kind of devastating, I would assume, seeing interest rates going that far. I have a tendency to believe that the interest rates are not going to make it that far. They are not going to make it that far before the Federal Reserve loses their faith that they are going to be able to maintain a functioning economy moving on at any higher rate. That's just going to be very difficult for them to try and do. I believe that they are going to convince everybody that they're going to do that. I think they're going to convince everybody that the interest rates are going to go all the way up to 15-20% at the Fed funds level. I believe that they are going to convince people of that. But I don't think it's going to get very far. Just simply because the economic activity that's going to happen from that is going to be so diminished that the pain that people feel from it is going to force them to do something different. I really think that it's going to be some other like issue that comes up. because the Federal Reserve is not going to be able to drop interest rates and stimulate the economy in any kind of significant fashion without some sort of other crisis taking place. And if it's not like a war that's happening, like if the Ukraine and Russia thing escalates into other countries and starts spreading around the world, unless something like that happens, it's most likely going to end up being some sort of sovereign debt crisis, corporate debt crisis, like worldwide style thing that's happening. And I can see the Federal Reserve in the United States allowing that pain to kind of take place throughout the world for a while before they go into some sort of monetary stimulus again. They really want to get some of that ammo back. In order to stimulate the economy, they need interest rates up around 5%. That's at the Fed funds level. Even getting it to 2.5% is going to be very devastating to a lot of people, businesses. The amount of economic activity and transactions that are going to come from that is going to be very low. And so the Fed is going to know at that point that they are going to have to do something different. And unless you have a major excuse like the pandemic or war or sovereign debt crisis, there's going to be no real reason to lower interest rates other than to save the rich. Because when the poor are experiencing higher interest rates, it doesn't really affect them. It just doesn't. If anything else, it's probably going to make their life a little easier. It starts slowing inflation down. It gives them some sort of return on savings. And when recessions kick in, they're the ones who are really like affected the least about it when they have losses like asset price depreciations. The hardest part is finding a new job or finding another place to live. Those things can be very difficult and very burdensome on somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of money in the first place. But as far as like the recession and downturns and interest rates and stuff like that, that really affects the people who have money and assets more than the people who are at the bottom end of things with no money and no assets. Now, the Federal Reserve and the raising of those interest rates, again, I just don't see them getting it past that 2.5%, mainly because that's the neutral rate. And the neutral rate of interest is where they're neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. They are just neutral. And that is somewhere around 2.5%, so they say. But we already learned from John Williams' speech back in November of 2018 that neutral rate has dropped dramatically, and they think it's somewhere around 1.5% now. And if that's the case, the Federal Reserve really doesn't have that much more room to move. They have another 0.5 point, and they may find themselves hitting neutral. Since they are trying to restrict the economy some, they can move it past that, get it up to that 2.5%, but I very seriously doubt they're going to get any farther than that. If they do, again, we are going to see some serious issues come from that. When the Fed does go to change that rate and drop it again, you're going to find that a lot more of the central bank digital currency kind of thing is going to start coming into play. You're going to find a lot more like sovereign nations, corporations, commodities, all that stuff moving onto a digital ledger platform. If that's the case, then we could really see a change to the way global commerce is done. Right now, pretty much the United States dollar is it using the SWIFT system. There is really nothing else that's even that close to touching what the United States can do. And mainly it's because we are willing to take on deficit spending. The main reason, deficit spending is what gets dollars out to the world. If you want the world to use your currency as the world reserve currency, then you have to be able to supply them with those dollars. And unless you plan on lending it to them, the best way to get dollars out to the world is buying stuff. And so you have to be able to take on an incredible amount of deficit spending, or not just deficit spending, but deficit trading, right? So be able to import a whole lot more than you export so that you can get the dollars out to the world. And you would have to be able to take on a debt market or enough debt to provide enough liquidable assets, mainly the U.S. Treasuries, to be able to fund the world with that kind of asset out there. No other country or nation is even going to remotely come close to doing something like that. So in order to replace that, it would have to be on like a digital kind of aspect or something, or a digital ledger kind of form, because no other nation is willing to take on that kind of responsibility, or nor should they. I mean, you think about the compromising position that you put into when you hold the world reserve currency like that. So if the Federal Reserve doesn't get their interest rates up high enough to drop them down during the next recession, and we don't have a reason like a pandemic or a war for the government to go into a bunch of spending, then I'm not sure what it is that they can do other than just admit that, things are screwed up and that they're just going to have to start handing out money for people to go out there and spend into the economy to get the money velocity up and moving again. Otherwise, there's just not going to be enough like people out there willing to take on debt at a higher interest rate in order to stimulate the economy. It just won't happen. Anyway, I babbled on enough. What are you guys talking about? All right, markets are crashing now. Yeah, we'll see what happens here in a little bit. Is the milkshake theory playing out right now? I believe it is. I believe the milkshake theory is playing out right now. And George Gammon did a great video probably about a week ago talking about the milkshake theory and Brent Johnson's thoughts on that. I really see how we can find the dollar, which is strengthening right now, moving up with gold as people are fearful of where it is that they need to go, especially if they're like outside of the United States, fearful of their sovereign nation, their sovereign debt markets, their currency, and the commodities within that nation. Maybe not being the robust market that they should be. Even when commodities move up incredibly high, you end up with a situation in which that it's not exactly like a free-flowing. For example, lumber, right? Lumber is a great example of this because lumber prices move up to 1,000 per thousand. Everybody thinks, oh, great, look at everybody who's dealing in lumber makes all this money. But when you have $10 2x4s, you don't sell nearly as many of them as when you have $3 2x4s. So the amount of inventory you're rolling over, the amount of transactions begins to diminish, and that's economic activity. So you don't want that. You want a lot of economic activity. You want these things to be churning over quite frequently. So this is where like I feel that going into the future, if the Federal Reserve doesn't have enough room to stimulate the economy by dropping interest rates, supplying the world with this currency, then the world is going to find a replacement for that. And if we move to a digital ledger system, then you can do transactions like that are on the fly between currencies. You can go from one nation's currency to another nation's currency, basically do that transaction on the fly and be able to fulfill those contracts, and it done all on a smart contract. I mean, like even outside of like the view of governments or courts or anything else. It can make all these things completely irrelevant. Um, I mean, it's possible anyway. So buy gold. Where do you put money? Um, I don't tell people where to do with their money, but I'll tell you what I do. I do cash, silver, cryptos, and a little bit of stocks. That's where I put my money. Now, a lot of you know that I just recently purchased a house. I had to put a lot of down payment on that house, which pretty much depleted all my cash, but I'm building that back up. So I'm saving a lot of cash right now. The dollar index is growing every day. The markets are turning down. You're going to find buying opportunities coming into the future, and being in a cash position right now, I do not think is a bad idea. I never have thought it was a bad idea. When everybody was screaming that cash is trash, and I was saying, nope, you're going to see the dollar strengthen from here. And it did. And people were saying that I was crazy from it. But when the downturn in the market happens, when you have a crash in prices of anything, housing, stocks, whatever, cash is what you need. Cash on hand in order to take advantage of those things. And everybody kept saying it, there's going to be a market crash. Well, if there's going to be a market crash, then you want the money, you want the cash. You want to be in the cash when the crash happens. All right, waiting for Tesla and Apple to roll out a comprehensive lease program. Let's see here. BTC getting hammered today, down nearly 3,000 today to 36,900. Right on. Dollar cost average. A dollar cost average into Bitcoin. It did very well. I'm still up on my Bitcoin. Not a lot. I haven't checked it since it dropped down to 36, but I've been dollar cost averaging about $50 a week into Bitcoin. I did it for an entire year. It done very well. Keeps pace with my stock portfolio. I haven't checked it today. I think the stock portfolio was up a little bit more than my Bitcoin was yesterday. But that's how I do it. And the same thing with stocks. I dollar cost average into everything. I am a terrible, terrible market timer. I've tried timing the market many times, and every time I try and purchase thinking that I nailed it, prices always go down. So I just dollar cost average, and it works out well. Why? Oh, hey, thank you, Jaws, very much for the $9.99. You are so cool. We have to watch later. Spending the day with my wife today. Have a great weekend. Well, thank you very much, Jaws. Enjoy your time with your wife. Why the hell would someone who is into economics invest into BTC? How is it that you can be into economics and not understand the benefits of having a transaction that is available for anybody to do with anybody around the world without anybody stopping you? If you don't see the value in that, then I think you're missing out on a lot of what is available out there as far as knowledge comes when it comes to studying economics. You have to take this into consideration. You know, there was a time when you could have told an economist 15 years ago that we would have to deal with negative interest rates into the future. They would have said that you were crazy, and they would not have taken on any kind of economic thought using negative interest rates. Guess what? They missed it. They missed out on a lot of stuff because they wouldn't take into consideration negative interest rates. It happened. So same thing with cryptocurrencies. Just look around the world. Central bank digital currencies are taking place. Bitcoin is not going anywhere. It's only getting more popular. To have this like idea that Bitcoin is just one day going to go away, it isn't happening, right? I mean, a long time ago when they said it was a scam, right? They said that it was going to fail. Since that day, Bitcoin has yet to fail. Not one single time or moment since the transactions started happening has Bitcoin failed. The price of it is much different from the protocol doing its job, right? The transactions continue. The value of Bitcoin, that, who knows what that is, right? But the Bitcoin program is going to function. It's going to continue to function into the future, and it is not going to go anywhere. Right? So that's Bitcoin. All right. Hey, all-nighter, right on, man. There's no such thing as intrinsic value. All value is subjective. That's right. It is. Strongest assets in the near future will be food. Yeah, I think preserving food is going to be the most critical skill going into the future. You know, one of the things that what was that like? It kind of reminds me of that story. What was it? Into the Wild? Is that what it was? Where the kid who was like going to go try and find find himself or whatever, was going to take like a bag of rice and go wander around in the woods by himself for a while, and he ended up getting stranded like on like in a bus out in the middle of nowhere or something. Like I can't remember the exact story, but he killed the moose. Like he got this damn moose, and he was only able to eat like a little piece of this moose before like maggots got in there and just destroyed all the rest of the meat of this moose. Like he could not preserve enough of it to make any use of it. So I think about that kind of situation. Like all of a sudden somebody comes to you and it's just like, man, I got 100 pounds of something. What do we do with it? Well, you got to be able to preserve that stuff, right? You got to be able to can it, dry it, do something with it in order to preserve it for another time. And if you don't have that skill, then there's no point in getting anything more than what you can eat at the moment. So that's probably one of the biggest skills to have, is to be able to preserve food. That's huge. All right, thank you very much for the super chat there, Joshua. Let's see here. Do you think the Fed will reverse course soon? It seems like things are already starting to crack, especially in the startup world. No, I don't think they're going to reverse course soon. I don't think they're going to reverse course until they have inflation expectation to be anchored well into the idea that it's no longer going to be moving up as fast as it is. So until the inflation expectation changes, I think the Federal Reserve will keep up with the idea that they are going to continue raising the interest rates. Again, that's what the Federal Reserve is going to state and do out there. They're trying to put out the credible threats and manipulate markets. All that stuff, you got to just kind of take into consideration. It's just about credible threats. Everything that they say that they plan on doing, it's all subjective. Watch what they do. Watch where the Fed funds rates go to. Once they hit that 1.5%, I would be very concerned. 6 months after that 1.5% is where I think is really things are going to be very interesting. So, say, what is it, another 3 months from now or so? Give it another 6 months, like a year and a half from now, we're going to see the real impacts of what everything that is happening from the Federal Reserve and their policies that they're doing right now. We're going to see the real impact from that in about 6 months to a year. That's really where we should watch. Markets are going to behave very differently. I mean, they are going to react in a much different fashion. So you're going to see these wild moves inside of the Dow and maybe moves in commodities and stuff like that, trying to react and position themselves off this information that the Federal Reserve is getting out there. So the Federal Reserve is going to watch that, see where things are actually going to, find out what the real impact on the economy is going to do, and then we'll find out how far they really actually go with a lot of these rates. Again, if war breaks out even more, or pandemic decides that it's going to flare up some more, who knows what the like the black swan events could come from, right? We don't know what government's reactions or central bank's reactions are going to be to that. But that's what I see. The Federal Reserve really wants to get their ammo back. They would love to have 5% on the Fed funds rate. Won't be able to get it there, right? They're going to get as far as they can, and then they're going to have to come up with something, some sort of reason to be able to stimulate the economy again. And if it isn't war or sickness, it's probably going to be like sovereign debt crisis. So until that happens, we'll have to figure it out. It's not like, I don't think they actually have like a plan that, okay, once it hits this moment right here, then we're good. It's more of like, hey, the conditions appear to be about where we want them to be, right? This is like, it's a guessing game for them. All right, man. Who else sent me some money there? I see I got quite a bit on a super chat. Where did that come from? Oh, there it is. Hey, what is that, Felipe? Lewis, thank you so much. Appreciate your channel. Big question. Why does the Fed have the gold in the reserves valued at 42.22 per troy ounce? Would love to see a video on this. If the government buys back gold, if an emergency occurs, would they do it at 42.22 per troy ounce? I think Ron Paul asked Ben Bernanke that exact question, and the confused look that Ben Bernanke when he tried to answer this question was really comical. I mean, he like stalled out, and it was like out of tradition, right? Like literally, that's the reason why the Federal Reserve holds gold, is for tradition. Like it's like we do this every year. We we hold. It's like the idea that it's a tradition is comical. It's not because it's a tradition. It's because it's the ultimate base of value of money, right? Everything comes down to gold. It's either gold and everything else is debt. So gold is the only thing of value that the Federal Reserve has. However, there's not nearly enough gold to back the currency. So now it gets backed by debt. More or less, it's a promise of U.S. Treasuries to pay the debt. And that's more of a promise of the U.S. government to tax its citizen. And if they don't pay the taxes, they'll just come and seize their assets. So it's the promise that men with guns will pay the money, will make sure the money gets paid. I mean, that's what money is based off of. So when you have gold at the Federal Reserve, that's really the backing of the money in a sense. Because if you have a Federal Reserve note, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, a Federal Reserve note itself, like the actual folding currency, is a claim ticket to the issuing Federal Reserve Bank. So like every Federal Reserve note, it either comes from like Dallas or somewhere, like one of the Federal Reserve issuing banks. So when you take that note to that bank, if that bank was to go bankrupt, if they were to lose you could take that Federal Reserve note as a first lien paramount right to their balance sheet. Now, on their balance sheet, if you go to look at these Federal Reserve banks, they list SDRs, which is special drawing rights. That's the basket of world currencies that the IMF has. They list SDRs and then gold, and then they start moving into other assets after that. So if they were to go bankrupt, according to their own statements, those Federal Reserve, the paper Federal Reserve notes, the folding cash, is the first lien paramount right to the Federal Reserve balance sheet, which has gold on it. So is that some way of bringing some sort of confidence to the Federal Reserve note? Possibly. Is that the reason why they hold it? Maybe. Are you going to get your gold at 42.22 an ounce? I doubt it. I really seriously doubt it. But it does say it in the paperwork, so I mean, it is that idea that it could happen. All right, let's see here. Wow, a lot of you talking. Okay. Something seems weird about the 42.22. It does. It does seem weird about that. Gold back in the day was $20 an ounce. It was $20 for pretty much a 1 ounce coin. I mean, that's really what it was. And now they have like $50 face value on these coins. Like, so if you go and get like one of the American gold eagles, like the sovereign bullion from the United States, they have a face value on it. Like even the silver eagle has a $1 face value. You could spend a silver eagle down at the store. I mean, it's a legal tender. Same thing with those gold coins. They have a face value of $50. So if the Federal Reserve was to completely fail and go bankrupt, there is still legal tender in the country with those gold and silver coins. I mean, that's still legal tender that you could use, right? So if the Federal Reserve was just completely gone, there's still currency here. Now, I can't imagine what things would be selling for if you took a face value of a gold coin at $50 that's worth like 2,000 Federal Reserve notes. I can't imagine what like prices of cars and stuff would be if you're using gold coins to buy them. But I can't imagine them being as high as they are right now when you're exchanging them for Federal Reserve notes. Does that kind of make sense? Thoughts on crashing the stock market in order to save the bond market? That's interesting. Thinking like maybe people getting out of the stock market so they would move more into the bond market as a safer place to be. Um, I don't know if that's a safer place to be right now. Typically, when you're moving into bonds, you're looking for that safe, secure asset of a return on your money. And if you're in fear of inflation coming into the future, then buying a bond might not be the best place to go to, since you are most likely guaranteeing a loss of purchasing power, but you may lose less purchasing power by buying into the bond market. So I guess it would really depend on what your feelings of inflation are going to be going into the future. If you feel that inflation is going to be still running rampant, then being in the bond market probably isn't exactly the place to be, unless you're buying like one of those, I savings bonds that are adjusted for inflation. If a crash is going to happen in the market, I wouldn't want to be in anything else other than cash. Like, I would want to be prepared to buy back into the market after the crash happens. So I don't know if necessarily getting or crashing the market to get the bond market to increase is really going to play out very well. I think a lot of people would just get out of the market and just get into cash or get into gold or something like that, if they were trying to protect themselves from inflation anyway. An American Platinum Eagle has a higher face value at $100 than the American Gold at $50. But the gold is worth more than platinum, yet platinum is twice as rare as gold. Yeah, it goes by the demand for it. Like, it also, like the liquidity of platinum. You might find that platinum is rare than gold. And you might find that it's worth more at times. But when it comes to being able to liquidate that. How many buyers of a gold coin as opposed to a platinum coin would there be? And even more so, how many buyers to a silver coin would there be over a gold coin? So this is some of the things that I think about. Is like, yeah, you have a lot of value inside of a platinum coin, rarity inside of a platinum coin. The chances of it going up in value, if people were to consider that, could be dramatically higher. But then when it comes time to unloading or getting the cash out of it, how quickly can you do that? How easily is platinum over gold or over silver? Those are some of the things I think about, include or palladium even. Like, you might have a palladium coin, but who are you going to sell a chunk of palladium to other than maybe another coin dealer or something like that? Selling a silver coin, I mean, hell, you can probably walk down to just about any bar in town and start asking people. I bet you find somebody who would be able to give you, $20, $30 for that gold coin. So, gold is more recognizable, exactly. Um, Gold answer: bonds and inflation outrunning the return. Would you be? Oh, would you be the boss man? All right. Everything seems so out of whack on all levels. It really does. The relative value of capital goods, consumption goods, wages must rebalance, savings must increase. The market is going to force it since we will not allow it. Yeah, you can't really stop market forces. They're going to take over at some point, no matter what you do. I mean, you can try and obscure it all you want, but the free market forces eventually take over and bring the true equilibrium to the stage. All right, I own platinum eagles, and my local coin shop will happily pay me for them. Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, my coin shop would buy just about anything you got too. But then that's just one location. What if you're not near your local coin shop? You say, like, what if you had to pick up and go someplace, and all of a sudden you're in an area that you need to unload this platinum, but you can't find anybody or a coin dealer. Like, that's the issue that you find. It's not like having platinum is a bad idea. You just got to make sure you have your network built up to be able to unload that stuff, or to liquidate it when you can, or when you need to. If that's not a concern of yours, like, like, I don't even care, I'm just holding on to these platinum coins for the next 50 years, then yeah, then at that point it doesn't matter. All right. Trade silver for guns. Commies in charge are trying to stop the free market. Yeah, they've always, everybody, anytime the word government is governance, is governing, right? It's trying to prevent people from doing things that they want to do, or help other people prevent other people from doing things that they want to do. I don't know exactly how to claim it, but if you put the government into anything, what you are doing is you are stopping free market or preventing free market from happening. There's no better example of how well a free market works than to look at the marijuana industry, especially in an area that has it illegal, right? Most places, most states where marijuana is illegal, the price of it is off the charts. It's like super expensive. It is a worthless plant. It has almost no value to it whatsoever. I mean, the medicinal value of it is probably the only true, like, value that it has to it. The value of getting high off of it is not there. There's nothing good about it, except for just maybe being able to relax for a minute. So it doesn't take any special skills to make it, right? I mean, there are good growers out there who know how to grow a plant really well, but I've seen people throw seeds behind the shed, forget about it, and grow some killer weed. So it's not like growing it has any kind of real special skills to it or anything. You can grow just about as much as you want. It doesn't take any special skills there either. So once you have a situation in which you take the legalities away from it, it's like it's not illegal anymore. It just turns into a regular plant, and then it doesn't have any value, right? Go and look at all these dispensaries that are here in Oregon. They're almost all for sale. They're selling them off to all the bigger corporations because owning a shop doesn't have any real profit inside of it, since the price of marijuana is just cheap as hell. It practically pours out onto the street. There's no, like, other than the process, like processing it, there's some value in that, selling like the edibles or the dab or whatever it is. But like growing flower and selling flower, it's just like you'd have to do so much of it that there's really just no real money involved in it. So it just shows that if you want to add value to something, take something that somebody wants and make it illegal, and then the value will be there. But if there's real no value to it, and you take the legalities away from it, it just goes to show there's this, like, it's not what everybody thought it was. Everybody thought that marijuana was going to be some awesome industry that everybody was going to be making all kinds of money at it. And I'm like, no, it's just damn weed. you know all right. I miss good Mexican weed. Man, that old brick stuff, I guess I would miss it for the memories or something like that, but God, that stuff was terrible. All right. At least I remember it being terrible. That brick stuff, packed with seeds. All right. Physical silver premium is at $20 to 60% over spot. 20 to 60% over spot. Depending on from, this seems crazy. The first 20 to 60 over appreciation goes to someone else. Yeah, the premiums on silver right now are just incredible. Like, I remember getting silver for like 35 cents over spot price. And to think now you end up paying like, I mean, upwards of $10 over spot price. I mean, that is just insane to think that, it just goes to show there's a difference between the paper price and the physical price. Did I see somebody send me a super chat earlier? Oh, it was a super sticker. Well, thank you, HF, for the 1999 super sticker. What was the others? There we go. Bradley, thank you for the $4.99. With possible recession in mind, would you see it wise to have a large cash on hand in case of run on the banks? I do see having cash on hand, not a large cash on hand, because you don't want it stolen or burnt up or something. So it's not very safe to have a large portion of cash on hand. But to have it for the reason of a bank run itself, like you're concerned about your bank going bankrupt, or closing down or something, or just not being able to get your money, that I'm not terribly concerned with. Not at this point. It could happen, but the idea of there being like a bank run of that magnitude, I think that's a little bit farther off of a case than to be concerned or have that kind of level of concern, at least at this point. I am not. I have my money. Most of my money sits in the bank, and that's where I have it. Just because I'm just not that concerned about it. But by saying that, I also have insurance policy to protect myself in case the bank does shut down. So, like, I do other things to try and, to not put all my eggs in one basket. If that's where all your money, if like all your money, all your assets and everything is in cash, I would be very concerned about holding on to that in your possession. I would feel a lot more comfortable putting that in a bank, and especially like a smaller community like credit union. That's what I use. I feel that that's a safer place to be. But that's just me. A lot of people feel much differently about that and feel that you could wake up tomorrow and find that you can't go down to the banks, and it could happen that quickly too. So you do have to take that into consideration. But I wouldn't be so concerned about like not being able to get my money out of the bank, at least not at this point. That is something to be worried about for the future. You need friends to be a community to make it or be eaten. Yeah, having a great network built. Network of like-minded individuals, network of people that you can trade with, trade skills with. Like, like I said, you might know somebody who's a mechanic and you can, right? So you have them work on your truck and, you can can them up a bunch of fish or something like that. Like, you figure out who it is that has the skills that you don't have and learn what it is that they need so that you can provide it for them. That's the type of networking that really needs to be done if we go into some serious hard times, because you're going to find like money isn't going to really help you out that much. It's going to be more about what you have that you can trade, whether it's physical possessions or skills. All right. Let's see here. Probably be good idea to keep maybe 10% of cash outside of the bank just in case. Yeah, no, I find that to be a very reasonable, very reasonable amount. I mean, 10%, yeah, it's a lot. If you lost it, it would hurt, but it's not everything in the world. It's just, it was just a lot. And so you can recover from a 10% loss. So I think that's probably a great idea. What time is it? 45. All right. To do. It's hard to find people my age that think about these things. Um, yeah, how old are you? Just out of curiosity, because if you are younger, if you are 18 and you are thinking about this stuff, then you are going to do very well. Um, when I was 18, I was not even thinking about this kind of thing. But if you're taking into consideration what your financial future is going to be like, what it is that you can invest in now, the things that you can do to help protect yourself in case of a downturn, and you're 18 years old, you're on it. You're doing great. Or even if you're 30 years old, I mean, shit, I didn't really start like studying this stuff until, I was, well, about 30, I guess. I was probably 30 when I really started kind of, started getting into it. And it wasn't until I was about 35 that I really started focusing a lot more. And then, by the time I was in my late 30s, going into my early 40s, I was like full on, like every day, 2, 3, 4 hours of research every single day. You start doing something like that, and your life changes, and the way you handle money, the way you spend money, all that stuff changes. Increasing rates won't have as much effect. Mm, I don't agree. I think it's going to have a pretty big effect on a lot of stuff. Mainly like what it is that the asset prices are going to do, especially ones that you have to take out a loan to buy, cars, houses, stuff like that. Those things are going to be really affected by the interest rates. Uh, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, that's for sure. But there's two things to be said for that. Like they ask Warren Buffett, like, how do you diversify your portfolio and stuff? Or I forget exactly the question they asked him. And he says, you don't make it rich by spreading your money out all over the place. You make it rich by putting all your money into one thing that does really well. And that's how you make it rich. That is how people end up going, like those are the type of people who you see have millions of dollars and then no money and then millions of dollars again and no money, is because that's the type of attitude they have. They are willing to jump full on into one major thing that does very well. I'm a little nervous about doing stuff like that. I'm more of a dollar cost average. I like to put my money in many places, so I guess I'll never make it like rich like Warren Buffett. All right. Should you ever find out where you really are, don't blow up. It is what it is. It's not heaven. Huh, interesting. When I was 18, my life was hot chicks and playing in a band. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I was not into anything other than just having a good time. Like, I just didn't think about anything about the future or planning for the future or anything when I was 18. So, you know, I, I, the coolest part about being, if you were 18 and you're figuring this stuff out now, is that if you could figure out something to put your money into that's a compounding interest, and you just even put like even just a a simple amount of money into it. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that much. I'm not going to give you a number, but just, even just a simple amount of money. And you do that consistently from the time you're 18. By the time you're 60 years old, you could have been a dumb shit for your entire life and you're going to still come out pretty good. I mean, but you have to be dedicated and committed to it now at 18 in order for that to work. And most 18-year-olds just aren't there. And that is the biggest advantage when it comes to investing on that kind of level, is to have that kind of have the time, have the youth to do it. Because at 45, I don't have compounding interest on my side, like not like you do when you're 18. So, I mean, 18-year-olds are probably in the best position to be an investor out of anybody in the entire world, just simply because they have the time and they got that compounding interest on their side. After that, if you're 45 and you're trying to figure it out, unless you come up with like a really great business model, I don't know what it is that you're going to do to save or invest that is going to provide for your future. I mean, it's a tough spot to be in. I'm super concerned about it. So, I mean, yeah, if you're in the same position I'm in, yeah, we don't have that advantage of compounding interest. So, we have to do something like pretty significant, you know. All right. Warren Buffett owns the railroads, yeah. I started researching finance, how to keep my money after getting my first engineering job and seeing how much money they took out of my paycheck for taxes. Yeah, did you figure some stuff out? I mean, you figure out a way to make it happen? All right. If you need to move prisoners, well, who get paid? Huh. The plan for a lot of people is inheritance. Yeah. Man, what a that isn't much of a plan. And then like what do you do like once you get your inheritance? Like if you're not into the mindset of having, retaining, saving or making money, but more of inheriting money into the future, you're going to blow that money and you're going to be broke again. All right. Is that a 2002 Toyota Corolla? No, it's a 1999. All right. Dan was saying that Bank of America was having problems. Yeah, I'm not sure if I put the link down in the description of this video, but I was reading where like they're talking about some of the debt markets of these banks may end up like being in trouble because like these banks they sell bonds just like a lot of other corporations do, and if they can't pay their bonds, guess what happens? So I heard that they were having issues maybe in some of the debt crisis situation flowing into these major banks. I don't know how likely that's going to be, but it could happen. No, it's a Corolla. You want me to show you the sign on the back of the car? All right. Educated economy. Man, how do I deal with having small PP? I don't know, man. I don't. I really don't know. Anyone want a big tip? Save your money. Daily driver? Yes, it is. It's my daily driver. I also have an old like S10 pickup that I drive around occasionally too. I drive old vehicles. Like, you know, I paid $500 for this Toyota. I've driven it a couple of years. I'm hoping to drive it a couple of more years. Eventually, I'm going to drive like a nicer, newer car. Like I'm kind of have like this vision of driving a Camaro in a couple of years. Drive something nice around. But when I get there and it's time to buy that car, I probably won't. I'll be like, no, the Toyota's fine. Do you shave every day? No, I don't shave every day. My, not to like talk too personally about it, but my facial hair grows so slow that like throughout my 20s and 30s, I would literally forget to shave because I just didn't need to do it every day. And I was working like, you know, construction and lumber yards and stuff. And so it didn't really matter. So now it's like, you know, I shave every day and it's just like, it's a weird habit for me to be into. But I try to, you know, but no, not every day. That's a weird question to ask. All right. When do you see the recession ending? I don't know. I think it's probably we're going to have to see how the recession starts to play out, what causes the recession, the reaction from the Federal Reserve. I'm going to assume that it's going to end up something very different from what people would expect. Like when the inflation started kicking in and we found inflation running up over that 2%, typically the Federal Reserve would have adjusted their monetary policy to go for that 2% target, but they didn't. They let the monetary policy continue to let the inflation run hot. And they said that they were going to do this. They said that they were going to do it to let the inflation, or to have the average inflation rate of 2%. But we don't know what average inflation is or how they exactly calculate that. We just know that for the last, well, pretty much since the great financial crisis, since 2008, the Fed has failed to achieve a consistent 2% inflation target. They've been well under that most of the time. So when it comes to an average inflation, if you try and figure out what it is that average is, I mean, is it an average over 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it average starting now? What does average inflation really mean? It ends up becoming like an arbitrary number for the Federal Reserve. So when it comes to a recession ending, we're going to have to find out how much of this inflation they're trying to combat by letting the interest rates continue to rise into a downturn in the economy. This is something that they typically wouldn't do. Like, they wouldn't let interest rates be that high in a downturning economy. They would want to drop interest rates, but they're not going to do that. So how long will the recession be? Probably a lot longer than what even the economists would anticipate, because the Fed's going to be reacting to it much slower than what they normally would have done. I don't know. So I'm guessing you would see like a real ending to the recession probably about 6 months after they start dropping interest rates again. That's probably, like, they'll probably claim there's ending recessions or anything like that, but as far as the economic impact, like where you actually see things getting better from a downturn in the market, will probably happen very much, because their monetary policy takes 6 months to a year. So whatever adjustments they make to it, just think it's 6 months to a year is really where it's going to affect the economy. So, markets will behave much differently. Don't think like try and like separate the markets from the economy. Think about like economic activity happening, how many transactions, how many people are going out and doing stuff, how many cars are being purchased. That's economic activity, like transactions. The market is like the Dow, like that's market participants, that's people freaking out or whatever. That isn't showing what's going on in the economy. That's just showing what the market value happens to be by what perception people have at the time. Economic activity is much different. All right. Let's see here. Wayne asks, it's just gonna get easier. However, ask yourself. It's just gonna get easier. However, ask yourself, is easier better? Most will say yes and tell you easier is just easier, not better. Yeah, easier is just easier. I mean, you can have a pretty easy life sleeping in a tent next to a campfire, right? I mean, you might have all the food in the world around you and stuff. Pretty easy. But is that better? I mean, is that better than a complicated life that you have living in a house and businesses and cars and all that other stuff? I mean, easier and better, that's really relative. All right. Diesel is $6.65 a gallon. Oh my goodness. That's in New York. Bill was $1,223 to fill your semi. My gosh. I can't imagine. We have hit peak oil production. All right. I wonder what else will be Russia's fault. I heard some people talking about it, just curious. Well, I wonder what that was about. Have you ever tried the bran muffin at Coffee Girl? Quite delicious. I have, and I tell you, it's funny that you mentioned Coffee Girl, because before I started this, I was actually going to go down there and get some lox. Ew, because it's kind of been my Thursday thing, but I backed out on it, saying, no, don't go down there and, spend money on lox. Go get a cheap cup of coffee and do a live stream instead. So now I really want to go to the Coffee Girl. All right. Time, I checked out that documentary about how the electric car stifled the U.S. Huh, was that a good one? All right. Nasdaq down almost 700. You know, you're going to find the markets are going to behave very, very crazy. In fact, during a downturn, it's going to create because you're going to see a bunch of down days, but you're going to find some days in the down market on these down well as the market starts to go down that you're going to find days where it goes up more in a single day than some of the days when the markets are going up, right? Because it crashes so hard, people pour into it on a particular day thinking that's the bottom and it drives the market way up all of a sudden, but it's just false hope and it continues to fall. Dow down 1100. Is it down 1100 today? Whoa, I haven't checked the markets out today. I did an interview earlier today with Richard, I can't remember his last name right now, Being Human podcast. It was excellent talk. What a great conversation I had this morning. And I don't know, when I get the link to it, I'll share it with you guys and I'll put the audio on my podcast. But what a great dude. It was a great talk. Okay, let's see here. All-nighter. I have been holding way off on my discretionary spending. Gotta save for AK, Alaska, not for an AK, right? For Alaska and 2 months of bills. Yeah, I hear you there. Wow, a lot of comments today. 458 of you. Nice. There's quite a few of up here in the stream today. Be sure and hit the like button, guys. I'll be out here for probably another, I don't know, 45 minutes or so. And we'll get more people up into the stream. If you hit the like button, it spreads the algorithm around and gets more people watching. So I really appreciate it if you did. The mosquito, the Alaska State, the Alaska State bird. Yeah, that's what I hear. I've never been to Alaska. I really would like to visit someday. Uneducated Economist, come to Discourse Syndicate podcast and talk to the Hexicans. Yeah, I know you, brother. You keep inviting me, and I keep missing out on it. When does that happen again? Send me, I know you messaged me on Telegram, so message me again. I think I might have some time. Don't you like doing it like on Fridays? Oh, but bummer, bro. I'm going to the movies Friday. Message me. We'll talk again, because I know you've been asking me to come on and talk with you guys, and I would really like to do that. Okay, Kevin, it's not been mostly about what we choose. It's about what government sabotages out of existence. Else electric cars would be the norm by now, among other advanced technologies we do not have now. Yeah, there's a lot that I feel as far as technology has gone that has really been pushed down so that they could basically profit from us. Like gasoline is a terrible form of energy. And I believe wasn't gasoline like a byproduct of refining, and so they just ended up using that for a fuel. But like there is so many better ways to find energy to use other than fossil fuels, but I don't know. It just seems that fossil fuel was like the easiest, fastest way for people to get power to things, that it just ended up being the most common form. But you would think by now that there would be a lot easier, cleaner energy sources out there. I mean, I was reading about how cars used to use gasification. Like they would burn peach pits, and then the exhaust that came from burning of the peach pits was then run through an internal combustion engine, and that powered the car. So there's a lot of different forms of fuel out there that people could use, and it doesn't have to be like fossil fuel. Byproduct of kerosene. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was. Friday night, 7 p.m., or you can come on at 7 p.m. Mondays. Let's do Mondays, bro. Let's do Mondays, because, yeah, Fridays I've been trying to spend going to the movies with my wife. Let's see here. Unpopular opinion now. Using other countries' oil is better than using our own. Use up their supply and save ours for later. I kind of feel that's what's going on with everything. Like, isn't it amazing that the United States can print up a bunch of worthless dollars and get the entire world to send us their stuff? Pretty cool, All right. Hey, another super chat from Juan. Thank you so much. Thanks for the great info. Well, thank you for the $5 super chat. I really appreciate it. Let's see here. How do you feel? How do you first start studying economics? Any book recommendations or websites? Things to always follow. Okay, so that was from Rhode Island. Rhode Island. First of all, you have to have a deep curiosity for economics. All right, you have to you have to question things and think about it on a regular basis. Like what is. That's like that was always my thing. It's like what is this? Somebody would say like it was the credit default swaps. What's a credit default swap? Or it was fractional reserve banking. What's fractional reserve banking? What's overnight lending? What's right? So these are the kind of questions that you have to ask. And a lot of times you're going to just do research into things that are just so confusing and you think you're never going to get it, but you just keep researching those things and you'll get little pieces along the way. I guess if there was one book out there that I would recommend for everybody to read would be really the only book I have ever read on economics, and that's The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin's The Creature from Jekyll Island. Once you read that book, you'll understand a lot more about the Federal Reserve, their role that they play, how they came into existence, some of the stuff that they do today. It becomes a whole lot clearer on what is occurring. After you read that book, it gives you a much better grasp of things. After that, it is really you. It is you and the questions that you ask and the research that you do. Um, I remember like reading a Federal Reserve speech, and as I'm reading this Federal Reserve speech, I would get like one paragraph into it, and there would be a couple of things that were stated in that paragraph. I had no clue of what they were talking about. So I would research what it was that they were talking about until I understood what it was that they had said, and then I'll continue on with this speech. And there was times where it might take me 2, 3, 4 days to get through a speech before I finally understood what it was that they were talking about. Or an article. Sometimes it would be like a news article. I would do the same thing. Something would be stated in there that I just didn't understand. I mean, they might say something like, like for example, like the repo, like overnight lending, or just even when somebody says like sovereign debt, like a lot of people are like, what does that mean? What does sovereign debt mean? When you hear these questions, you go and you ask, like, okay, so go to Google. What does sovereign debt mean? And then what is like collateral for sovereign debt? What does that mean? Why would there be like insurance for sovereign debt? What is, like all the stuff that goes into these things? When you start researching them, you'll get little pieces that start filling in, and then pretty soon as you're reading something else, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember when I was researching that they were talking about this very same thing. Pretty soon all these pieces start to come together and you realize, man, this is not as complicated as I thought it was going to be. There's a lot to it, there's a lot to understand and to know about, but I mean, i'm I barely graduated high school. I have reading comprehension issues. I'm getting this stuff, like, right? You study it long enough and you keep asking the questions, anybody can do this. I mean, it's not like it's an impossible magical thing that just occurs. It's tough. I mean, it takes a lot of dedication to constantly asking questions and researching and then being obsessed with that. I mean, most people would probably read 5 minutes into a Federal Reserve speech and go like, screw it, I'm putting music on, and not even not take it any further than that. So you do have to have that mindset for it, that you really want this information and you want to go for it. But you could do the same thing, like, I mean, a lot of people are obsessed with fishing or football or music or whatever, and they have to like research and study and get to know it so well that like they beat it to death. That's the type of thing that I do, and so far it's paid off. Like, it's amazing. Like, people say like, man, how did you get all this knowledge? It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I just kept asking questions and kept researching. All right. Do you know if bilingual teachers are in demand in the state. I don't know if they're in demand, but I think bilingual is like probably one of the coolest skills that you can have. Like I have always like just I just envy those who can speak two languages. I think that is probably like the most intelligent thing for me to be able to or to admire of somebody is to be able to communicate in that fashion. Like you got two people who really don't understand anything that they're saying to each other, but then you got a third person who can come in there and go like, here, that's amazing to me. And those who do it don't seem to have like they don't. It's not that big of a deal, but to me, that's like man, that's just like so impressive. All right. This is like inviting myself to a birthday party. Oh, what is? Let's see here. They have their own TV channels. What are you talking about? All right. Interpreters are in demand. I am an interpreter. Yeah. Going sideways is a verb. Government is a noun. The action is the problem. Yeah. Very true. Another job computers are going to take. I'm not sure on that one. Oh, Rain Rabbit. Hi, Rain Rabbit. Yeah, Rain Rabbit sent me an email asking about Social Security and if that would be a way of administering the central bank digital currencies. And after I kind of thought about it, I needed to put a little bit more thought into this, but I really liked what Rain Rabbit had to say about that because it seems like a very feasible way of like governments being able to push a central bank digital currency onto people without them really having any other choice. And now I've seen like a lot of other people's, and Rain Rabbit had a little bit different like thoughts on this too, but this is some of the things that I was kind of thinking about it. A lot of times, like when you bring up central bank digital currencies and introducing those into society and stuff, a lot of people will say, nope, the older population just won't do it. They are stuck in their older ways. And, it's just going to be cash and that's it. It's going to be sticking around because of that. Well, if you switch, Social Security payments or anything that's coming from the government, any kind of payment that comes from the government, you switch it over to a digital currency. I would give them all of about 4 days to figure out how to use it, and they'll be fine. I mean, once they get their hands on that money, and it's not necessarily free money, but government money, they're going to want to know how to spend it. And if it's in the form of a digital currency as opposed to a check deposit into their bank, I don't think they're going to care. They'll figure it out, and they'll get that money. But I think that's a very interesting theory as far as like a way to force digital currencies onto the people. And if you can get like the younger generation to do it, right, because they're already pretty much ready to jump right into digital anyway, and you can get the older population to do it because they don't have any other choice, then it's just a matter of squeezing the two. All right. All-nighter by decreasing means by decree means by decree. Yes, 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 Rain Rabbit. Thank you for that idea too, and thank you for the email. I really appreciate it. Well, honestly, they kind of got rid of some older people with the jabs. Um, I don't know about getting rid of, people. Anyway, um, something very interesting did happen with the older generation or the older population during the pandemic, and that is when everything got shut down, there was a huge wave of retirees. Like they're like, yeah, never mind. I mean, I'm about ready to retire anyway. I'll just retire early. And that took a huge chunk out of the labor force. At the same time, there was a whole lot less people going to school, being trained, getting ready to go into employment. So it left a gap in there between people who were retired early, a bunch of them, and people who were not being trained, right? Going in. That gap will eventually equal out. Like that will find its way, whether it gets replaced with innovation in technology or just gets replaced with people going back to work because they just don't have enough money, the massive tight labor market, that will come to an end. Society needs sovereign cash. Um, yeah, in order to remain a free and sovereign nation, I would say that's what it needs, but I don't think that's what we're going to have in the end. I think we're going to have a world government controlling of the people within the nations. Like each sovereign nation will have its own rules and regulations, but it will all be under a guise of a new world order and whatever currency that they are pushing on the people and decisions that they make. I mean, that might be a scary kind of doomsdayer scenario, but I kind of see it leading that direction. I mean, just think about the resistance. There's practically none, so just give it time. Lumber update. What's going on with lumber? I don't think we're going to see too much increase into the lumber prices. It's right around 1,000 per thousand. I haven't checked it today. It dropped down into the 900 per thousands yesterday. This current May contract closes on the 15th, so we have, another 10 days or so left on this contract before it closes. I don't think it's going to continue to go up. I don't think it's going to close at, 12 or 13 per thousand. I would imagine it's probably going to close very close to where it is now, if not maybe even a little less than this. One of the things that I see that has something I haven't seen for quite some time, and although I haven't seen it actually showing up yet, is that it sounds like the OSB market, the oriented strand board, the sheathing, is starting to come back online. There's a lot more of it available for purchase. Once that happens, then I'm imagining that the plywood prices, like the half-inch CDX prices, those are going to start coming down as it starts to compete with this OSB that's now starting to become more prevalent in the market. So I can see where plywoods could start to come down here going into the future. Right now, we're selling half-inch CDX at $51 a sheet. Last week, it was $57. So there is quite a bit of a drop there. Not so much that it's back down to the $22 a sheet that it should be. But, from 57 to 51, that was a fairly decent drop, better than 10%. And then talking with the pressure-treated guys, their prices, I get a price list from them twice a week, and their prices had come down pretty good. Not a significant amount, but they came down across all the items. Sometimes you'll find maybe a particular, size of lumber had a price drop, but everything else stayed the same. Or maybe even gone up, you just have one anomaly in there. This time, I see where pretty much all the prices had come down, which shows to me that there's inventory buildup taking place. And that's a lot of what I hear is the major concern right now, is that even though we're starting to see trucking become less of an issue, it's that, nobody can find any truckers. Well, we're finding from freight waves where trucking is becoming a little easier to find. It's still a very difficult industry to be in right now as far as getting available truckers to move stuff around. And that's where these mills are in a very tough spot to be in, because they want to produce, they want to push that lumber out there at 1,000 per thousand, but getting it away from the mill fast enough has not happened. And they are actually curtailing development because they have no place to put this excess inventory. It's starting to build up. I don't know if this is the case at the pressure-treated companies as well, but a friend of mine, and this is totally anecdotal, but he drove past the place that I buy my pressure-treated lumber from, and he said he has never seen so much lumber stacked up in their yard right now. So it seems to me that the inventory buildups are starting to happen here, even though there's still high demand for lumber and the prices are still elevated. If the mills go into curtailing, then we're going to end up with an inventory depletion at some point in the future, right? Especially if they're depleting or if they're curtailing because they have no place to put inventory. And that inventory is sold, and the only reason why it's still there is because they can't get it moved away from the mill fast enough. There's going to be an issue that comes from that. So if the mills are curtailing, there's going to be a spot in there where there's going to be an inventory depletion, and prices are going to spike during that time. Now, whether that actually happens, I don't know. But it just seems to me that could be a scenario going into the future. If we go into that time, and we find that interest rates are so high that nobody's building homes anymore, then that inventory that was supposedly sold may find that it wasn't sold and they don't want it anymore. And when that happens, you're going to find prices dropping fast and very fast. So where it goes, I'm not sure. That's the story that's happening though right now. There's inventory buildups taking place. Mills are curtailing development because they can't get that inventory away from the mill fast enough. Plywood prices appear to be coming down, although I haven't exactly seen it yet, but that's due to the OSB becoming more prevalent. So, anyway, that's the lumber update. I hope that helped. I haven't done a lumber update in a while. My trusses just arrived at $10,000 over. Yeah, I'm hearing that quite a bit. I mean, again, like, I'm selling 2x4s right now at $10 a piece. 2x4 standing and better. This is something that normally for I've been in the industry since I was 18 years old. A 2x4 on the cheap end, I would sell them for $1.50, and on the expensive side, they were $4.25. That was like the range that they were in. Right now, I have them at $10, and there was a time last year that I was selling them at $13. So lumber is very, very expensive right now, like too expensive. All right, what would the world look like if we didn't have bankers? It would probably be a very difficult world to do any kind of trade with anybody outside of your physical presence. That would probably be pretty hard. I mean, how would you have value of anything? Bankers are what creates the money. Bankers are what creates the loans. They're the ones who create the availability for your idea to come into fruition by going and borrowing money and putting that borrowed money towards an idea. I mean, what would the world look like if it didn't have bankers? It would probably be a very difficult world to navigate through. Now, what would the world look like if we didn't have like evil type of mindset bankers? That might be a different kind of story. But then again, if you weren't like an evil, greedy, kind of profit-hungry kind of banker, then you probably wouldn't make a very good banker, and you probably would go out of business. So, I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. All right. God says most will remain in the darkness and fight the truth. Few will find it and still share. All will be revealed. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on the student loan forgiveness? Most likely it's not going to happen. And the reason why you're not going to find a student loan forgiveness is like, how do you do that? Like, a lot of people say you can the government can just student loans are gone, right? No worries. Well, you got to think, where are those student loans, and what is happening with them right now that the government would be able to do that with? So you got to think, where are these student loans? They're in a security. They're called asset-backed securities, or better yet, student loan asset-backed securities, otherwise known as slabs. Literally, slabs, right? And now these slabs, they sit on the government's financial balance sheet. Now you got your balance sheet, you got your assets and your liabilities, right? These student loans are part of their assets, right? Even whether they're getting paid or not, it still has a value to them, right? They're a financial asset like a bond or a mortgage-backed security or anything else, but these ones are backed by student loans. Now, of their financial assets, these student loan asset-backed securities represents like 50% of it, right? So you have all these assets, gold, silver, land, whatever, and then you have a financial portion of that assets, right? So you got take all the physical assets away and you just got the financial portion. That's the bonds and stuff that you carry. Of those financial portions, 50% of that is the student loan asset-backed securities. It's a huge portion of their balance sheet. I mean, huge. So if you were to say, take those asset-backed securities, those student loan asset-backed securities, and you just said, they're gone, right? All of a sudden, here you got the United States with their balance sheet, assets and liabilities. Now their assets versus their liabilities just sank. Their credit rating goes to hell, interest rates go even higher, and the government can't afford to make their Social Security payments or whatever, right? Because the interest rates have gone so high. You can't just take these assets and just make them disappear like that. You can't do that. That's what a lot of people are imagining happening. So what ends up happening there is you have to purchase those student loan asset-backed securities off of the assets, off of the balance sheet of the government or of such nature, something like that. And the only way to do that is to what? Tax the people, right? You can charge the people a bunch of taxes and say, okay, we'll buy these student loan asset-backed securities off the balance sheet and get rid of them that way. Or you can try and do what? Like, how do you get rid of these things and not destroy your credit rating? Like, there's really nothing else you can do. So unless you get like a private organization out there that's going to say, okay, well, we're going to like just take private money and start buying these student loan asset-backed securities and just making them disappear, to saying, calling them up and saying, hey, we bought your student loan and you don't have to make your payment anymore. It's all done. Unless something like that happens, there's really nothing that can be done. It's just a bunch of talk. Either that or destroy the credit rating of the United States, which is already, kind of like teetering. I don't think they want to push that. I think it's just a bunch of talk. I think the people that have student loans are going to have to pay it back or suffer with having it hanging over their head for the rest of their life. I don't think they have much choice. There's going to be a little bit of student loan debt relief, like it does occur, but that's going to be like more like a carrot dangling out in front of you to make sure that you, like, the younger population doesn't get fearful of taking out student loans. They're gonna like create a situation in which that the people will feel like it's safe to do this, that there could be a relief in the future if things were to go wrong. Like, they will put that idea out there, but I don't think it will ever come to a point that it would actually be significant to the broad population. All right, student debt problem is just scratching the surface. It really is. I mean, there's a lot of talk behind it because it is such a burdensome debt to have that, most people, like, they just feel like, man, if this was just gone, my life would be so much better. But, it's a major financial decision that they put on people during a time when they should not be taking on such a financial decision of that magnitude. I mean, putting an 18-year-old kid into that much debt that early on in life is not smart. It's not a smart thing to do. Teaching a kid to, like, earn money, balance a checkbook, take on a little bit of debt, get burned by it, pay the interest on it, figuring that stuff all out before you have them sign up for, 20, 30, 40, 80, 100,000 plus of debt, that would be much smarter. You would be making much better decisions, like, even through the college years. Like, you'd be like thinking, man, I got this debt that I have to pay. I'm not going to go and just blow my money. But if you're not concerned about it, you just like, everybody's doing this, party it up, then yeah, you're gonna suffer the consequences from that down the road. All right, what are good books to learn about economics, like the previous gentleman asked? Like I said, I really can only recommend the one book that I've ever read, and that's The Creature from Jekyll Island. I would love to offer you up other books. There's probably some really good ones out there. After reading The Creature from Jekyll Island, I think the other thing to read would be Cantillon's essay on economic theory. I read that one too. That was incredibly insightful, because this essay was written back in like the 1700s, but it is incredible how, like, much of that information still, like, is relevant and pertains to some of the things that are taking place today. So after you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, read Cantillon's essay on economic theory. And then the other book that I've been reading some pages out of, but I haven't gotten very far into it, is The Wealth of Nations. And like Cantillon's essay, it was written like back in the 1800s or something. And that book is like 1,000 pages long. But still, like, that's the stuff that I've kind of leaned towards, but I don't read books, so I really can't offer up much in the way of like, books to read. I have a ton of them that people have sent me that I really would like to take the time to try and read through, but I have a reading disability, so I get 10 minutes of reading and then I have to set that down and go do something else for a half an hour and then come back and do it again. Um, it's one of the reasons why I pretty much link to articles a lot because I can get through an article, but that's about it. Like I read the article and I have to go and I think about the article for a minute and then I'll come back and read another one. But like news articles are about perfect for me because anything more than that, my mind is gone. So yeah, unfortunately, I just don't read a whole lot of books. And it doesn't have anything to do with economics, but I did listen to the audiobook of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Wow. Talk about a way to adjust the way that you are thinking in order to put yourself in a mindset that you will pretty much guaranteed to make money, or not necessarily make money, just do anything that you wanted to do in life, like any kind of goal that you had. After listening to that audiobook, or I mean, if you have the chance to read it, if like I haven't followed the principles within the book, as far as like writing down the goals and the timelines and the things that you plan on doing to get there. But just listening to the audio part of it, it's really changed my view on a lot of stuff. So that would be the other thing that I guess I would read would be, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Wow, a lot of comments. My goodness. Right on, guys. The COVID was just another big wealth transfer event, the biggest. Yeah, I kind of see that. Your life, women's study is incredibly pertinent as the safety and well-being of humans who create all the humans. It's vital. Yeah, I could see where something like that would be a very informative book to read. Everybody thinking stuff is expensive and it's not. The value of the dollar is just less. The reality is we've all been poor and now everyone's getting smacked in the face with reality. That's one way of looking at it. Um, have you watched Ray Dalio's video on world powers and currency domination? I haven't. I've seen some of the talk about it. Um, I don't know. A lot of these guys, I think they put out a lot of information as credible threats. I remember, like, it was quite a few years ago. Dalio was saying something about how everybody needs to get out of the dollar and the dollar is just ruined and a bunch of stuff like that. And pretty much from that moment, the moment that he said that, the dollar did nothing but strengthen after that. So, a lot of times I do feel that like these guys are putting out information because they're trying to direct the people in a particular direction that is not exactly to their, I don't know how to say it, to their benefit, not to the people's, but definitely to Dalio's benefit. Okay. Gentrification is disguised as property taxes pushing the middle class to sell homes. Yeah, I could see that, but it's not just that. It's just the types of businesses and stuff that comes to an area. Like I remember here in Astoria, it was full of like working class people. Like, you can just tell by the cars, the stores, the shops, the unique places that were here that have changed. Like you can see as people were moving into the area and driving the prices up, you got somebody who's remote working here. They left Seattle. They sold a $1.5 million home there. They buy a $500,000 home in Astoria. Now they got $1 million to spend here and they're remote working. And they want to enjoy some of the things that they had back up in Seattle. So they're looking for some of those businesses and some of those like conveniences that they used to have. And when they bring them here, they're expensive. Well, you start bringing in ever increasing amounts of those, it starts driving up the expenses of all the other businesses that are around. And then pretty soon the working class is no longer there because they just simply can't afford to shop at a lot of these places. They're not the type of places that they would normally shop. The homes have gotten expensive. The work is not the same anymore because they don't have the same like working class kind of people anymore. They got all these trendy new places and they're all working for like the hospital district that seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and all the like working class people end up finding another place to go to, and then the only thing that's left is like the people who are in extreme poverty, like the homeless, and then those who have like a lot of money. So you have like the separation that's happened here. There used to be homes here that were cheap, like you could go and buy like a fixer-upper opportunity, and and actually turn out a pretty decent house for a really decent price. The cheap, like even cheap rundown crappy homes are expensive. Like you can't afford to buy these things and just live into it. You have to fix it up first, which is even more money. The only people who can really do that are people who already have a lot of money, and so those type of opportunities are a whole lot less. There's not a lot of like rundown fixer upper opportunities here anymore. All right. Love you guys. This channel is my top of the day. Well, thank you so much, Boris. I really appreciate it. The banksters will be found and destroyed like the SS were during the liberation. Well, maybe. I have no money. Well, that's that's not a bad place to be in. I mean, I've had no money a couple of times in my life, and I think, to be honest with you, when I had the least amount of money in my life and the least opportunities, and I was stuck on a little piece of property out in the middle of the country with my family and the chickens in the garden, it was one of the happiest times. What's your thought on universal health care? Um, I am not. I am not a fan of universal health care. I'm not a fan of health insurance. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I found that anytime that you put a middleman in between a customer and the provider of whatever service you have, there is no way that you can make it any cheaper. That middleman has to be paid. So when you go to a doctor, if it's not like a catastrophe, like you didn't break your arm, like you got the sniffles, right? You got sore throat, you got strep throat or something like that. Like this is the situation that happened for me. I had strep throat. I didn't have insurance. I go down to the urgent care center. I told them I don't have insurance. I'm paying cash. The doctor looks at my throat, says, normally we do a bunch of tests and stuff like that to see and determine what it is that you got going on, but I'm pretty sure that you got strep throat. I'm just going to go ahead and write you a prescription for antibiotics and, whatever. And I was like, okay, great. It was $100 for the visit. It was another like $50 for the prescription or something like that. For $150, I had my strep throat taken care of. My wife has gone in for something very simple or whatever, and the bill ends up being like $800 or something. And I'm like, what in the world is going on that I can go and have strep throat taken care of for $150 total with the cash payment, no insurance? You go in with insurance, we end up paying $800? Like, it doesn't make sense anymore. So I found that unless it's a catastrophe, like, again, like you broke your arm or something, if you go in because you got an earache or, you got, something simple, you got like a little, you need stitches, you need a couple of stitches in your hand or something like that. You go in and you pay cash for these things, and you're going to find that it's really not that expensive. Like, where all the expense comes in is in administration fees and then a bunch of shit that they charge you for that they don't need to because they're charging the insurance company. So go in and pay cash for it. And then, not to mention, when you pay cash, something different happens. You get to hold them a little bit more liable. Like, oh, well, it's the insurance company that's paying for it, so I don't have to provide you with as good a service. But when you're paying cash, no, man, I mean, I'm paying you right out of my pocket right here. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, you have a little bit closer connection with the person who's providing you with the service or, anything really, even if it's an item. You got the cash in hand and you're the one who is handing it over. They treat you a little bit differently. Right? But when it's the insurance company, they don't have to treat you like anything. They're charging the insurance company anyway. So, yeah, I'm not fond of universal health care. Very true. My ex went to the urgent care and paid cash. They sent him an additional bill after he paid. Go Rambo and stitch yourself, Simon. I sliced my hand open pretty good and used super glue. It worked out all right. All right. Do what he is doing and monetize your lunchtime. That's it, man. Make money whenever you can, however you can. I mean, you guys know, like, I have a day job. I do YouTube videos. I call bingo. Like, Sundays are my favorite days because I have a day job that I go to. So I work my 9 to 5er. I try and put out 2 videos. I usually only do one, but I try and put out 2 videos and call bingo. I mean, that's a money making day for me, and it's Sunday. It's like the easiest day of the entire week, and it's like one of the most profitable days for me. So, all right, PayPal. Yeah, if you want to PayPal me, I leave links over on my about section of my channel. I haven't been putting the links down in the description. I'm not sure why. I kind of stopped doing it, but you can find the links over at the about section of my page. All right, super glue in my backpack first aid kit. Yeah, it worked really good. I mean, I was very surprised, and I mean, it was a long time ago I did that. I don't even think you can see the scar on my hand anymore. It was just like a little. What was that? No, I can't even see it. Maybe it was this hand. I can't even remember what hand it was on. All right. Okay. Not true. Personally, had growth on nose. Was seen within 2 weeks. Operated on the 4th week. Was not cancerous. However, does depend on what issue. Hip, knee, yes. Long surgery waits. Huh. Must have been talking about one of his medical issues. Okay, thoughts on taking economics in college? Yeah, we did a video on that just not too long ago, like 2 or 3 videos ago. And there was a study done, and on that study, they found that those who studied economics made far more money than anybody else did. Of course, when you study economics, you probably, especially if you're like getting a degree of some sort, you're probably going to be moving into a banking position, financial advisor, real estate, something like that, that would have a tendency to have a higher paying career to it anyway. So that's why studying economics would probably provide you with a job that's going to pay higher just because of that. But even still, I think just studying economics on its own, even if you have just a regular 9 to 5 job like I do, is incredibly beneficial. Like, you're not going to be making decisions like a lot of other people would be, because you understand a lot more about the conditions of the environment out there. And even like when it comes to investing or knowing how to invest, knowing and understanding the economy is going to provide you with the knowledge that is much, much better than the average person who doesn't understand economics. So, yeah, I forget what the exact question was again on that. Thoughts on taking economics in college? So yeah, if you go to college and study economics, I highly recommend that. In fact, I highly recommend studying economics, even if you don't go to college. No. All right, I used super glue many times, even used it on my son. Yeah, no, it works. I mean, super glue works. Super glue was made for battlefield wounds. School is indoctrinations. Yeah, it really is. What about cancer? In that case, the body is a self-destructive organism. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. I'm gonna give it just a few more minutes here. I think my phone's about ready to die anyway, 'cause I saw the battery thing come up just a few minutes ago. Studying economics lets you make better financial decisions. I came out with an additional $130,000 last year while making only $51,000 a year because of it. Yeah, and I actually hear that story a lot. There's a guy I know who worked, well, I don't know him really, but I know who he is. Worked for a tree service for like a long time, 15, 20 years. And he just gave it up one day. He says, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm just going to keep day trading like I am because I'm really good at it. And he just practiced trading, like doing his day trades over the course of 15, 20 years, and got to the point that he could just do it for a full-time job. And that's what he does now. He just does day trading. So, yeah, studying economics, even if you have a regular job, can benefit you immensely, immensely. All right. Frequency is thought, energy is intent, vibration is matter. Absolutely, man. Seems like inflation we are experiencing at this point is only a result of inflation expectation. I wouldn't say it's only a result of inflation expectation. You had a lot of scenarios happening there. You had a severing of the supply chain, right? So everybody was told to go home, and then there was stimulus checks issued out. So you had a fiscal response by it from the government, and then you had mass media attention. So you had three things happening there that caused the inflation to go as high as it did: the severing of the supply chain, mass money printing, and then mass media attention to it. The money printing part of it was only temporary. That is a very short temporary, basically jolt to the economy, and it's actually deflationary in the end, because what ends up happening is that they borrowed that money to stimulate the economy right now, but then you have to postpone your current spending to pay for that past consumption that you've done. That's where the stimulus is, although inflationary at the moment, long term it's deflationary. Let's see. They got bailed out and then free profits to boot. Okay. The Trex question, please. What's the delta on lumber versus Trex? Okay, so you're talking about the composite decking versus like just regular old treated decking, like wood decking. So I found throughout the years, I've been selling lumber for a long time, and summertime is the season for doing deck packages. Like right now, I would be selling a lot of them, but over the course of the pandemic, a lot of people who were planning to build a deck or replacing the deck did it. So it pulled back projects and future projects to that current time. When the prices went up as high as they did, something very interesting took place. Is that the price of composite decking versus just your standard treated wood decking got very comparable. And at one point, the wood decking actually got more than a lot of the available composite decking that was out there. So this brought a lot of attention to the composite decking market. Now I find a lot more people who are coming in. When they do that price comparison, they see that there's really not a lot of savings going to the wood deck. And so they're starting to move more into the composite decking products. And we sell a lot more composite decking on a regular basis to the customers now than we ever did before, but we're selling a whole lot less deck packages altogether. Does that kind of make sense? So going into the future from here, right? What do I see coming from the composite decking market is much more going to be much more prevalent, as people are finding much more attention given to the composite decking market as opposed to the wood. And as more composite decking lands out there, basically in the neighborhoods, the neighbors come over and they see the deck, they see the composite, they hear the homeowner say about how easy it is to maintain and how beautiful it is and all that other stuff. Well, that word of mouth starts causing more people to getting into the composite decking, and it becomes the traditional way of going about it. And I see the wood decking kind of fading away if the prices continue to stay elevated like they are. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's an easier product that maintains, it doesn't rot, everything about it is just a little bit better. The only thing I don't really like about it is that, from what I understand, like hot summer days, like in particular areas, it can cause that decking to get very hot. So like if you're barefoot, it may not be so pleasant. It damages fairly easy. Like I've seen people pull furniture across the composite decking and damage it. So you end up having to go to a much more expensive composite decking in order to keep up on the maintenance of it so you don't damage it. The more expensive you get, a lot of times I find the tougher the stuff is. Those are some of the things I really don't like about it. Some of the concealed fasteners that they use with it, although they've gotten better at it now, there was a time when it was very difficult to try and, say, replace a single board in the middle of the deck because it was damaged. You'd have to like disconnect all the boards to get to that one, replace it, and then put all the boards back. They've gotten a lot better at that now. So if you have concealed fasteners, which basically is a little clip that clicks into the edge of the decking itself and holds that down to the joist so you don't have screws going through the face of it. a lot of times now they figured out ways that you can disconnect those concealed fasteners and just remove that single deck piece that's damaged and replace it that way. So they've gotten better at a lot of the stuff that they had there. If you're asking me like what I think the companies are going to do going into the future, I think they're going to do pretty well, except that we're not selling as many decks, right? So although the customers are choosing composite over wood, there's just less of them being sold right now. Here in a couple of years, once like, a lot of this stuff has kind of faded away and people are going back into like, say, replacing the old deck or building new ones, um, that might change a little bit. Like we might find where lumber prices have come down and the composite decking isn't nearly as popular as it once was. Something like that could very well happen. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go get something to eat. I'm supposed to meet my wife for lunch. It's been awesome. 382 of you with 316 likes, close to $100 in super chats. You guys are so generous and so awesome. I thank you so much. And I thank you guys for hanging out with me for a couple of hours. You're all amazing. So, Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.